have mine. I just showed Well, I think it's. Oh, I know.
Calling the Newcastle City Council special meeting for Wednesday, April 12th to order. If you could please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for attending. Today's meeting is kind of a recap from a meeting that we had back in February to kind of see what we can come up with between the city and the county in regards to dispatch, and hopefully coming to a conclusion of only having one dispatch center instead of two. With that last meeting, we kind of left with the census of letting the new chief meet with Chief Bridge of Upton and Sheriff Brian Colbard to see if they can come up with a plan of action for what's best for our public safety, which is #1 priority, and for our county. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Chief Bowles. But before I do that, we did talk at our last meeting about the police department relocating, and we said about a month. Well, obviously it's a little bit over that month that we stated from the last meeting, and that was due to the training that we need and require by Motorola for our dispatch center, and that training will be conducted next week. And after that training's done, things should be moved over and up and running on the city's aspect. So, turn it over to Chief Bowles.
Okay, so myself and Chief Bridge and the sheriff met on a few occasions to discuss how we can move forward and come to an agreement for one dispatch center. My proposal, and the way that I came up with this proposal, there was a couple things in mind. One thing is public safety, and that's for everybody in the whole county. It's not just the city. And then the other thing is the taxpayers. I think we're all taxpayers, and I think it's my responsibility to save as much taxpayers' money as we can. Being frivolous with that, I think, is not the right thing to do. And so my proposal was, since the county has a new dispatch system, to give that back, to turn it back in, was $300,000 to $400,000, I think is what you guys said, which is a waste of money. So to utilize that, the city has 4 dispatchers who are trained. That's what they're doing every day. And then the place downstairs here that's been remodeled, it's more conducive to a working environment. It has windows. They're not stuck in a cave like they have been for years. So my proposal was to utilize the county's new system to move dispatch into the new dispatch area downstairs here, and then to have the 2 chiefs and the sheriff, however that goes down the road, but to have an agreement, have it written out, so that those 3 individuals make the decisions for dispatch. And then with the fire departments, the county would go to the sheriff, the city would come to the chief here, and then Upton would go to the chief over there with concerns. And the chief or the sheriff and the two chiefs would meet, a couple times a month to discuss dispatch and to bring any concerns up. And then those would be pushed out to the dispatchers to make sure that we're operating, on the perfect level, which we should be. So that was my proposal. I thought that would be the best for everybody who's involved. Having two dispatch centers is ridiculous. We have a very small community, and to do that to the taxpayers is irresponsible. But after some meetings, the sheriff said that there's a line drawn in the sand, and they will have their dispatch. So I want something resolved with this. I'm wasting a lot of time. I've got a police department to put back together, and so trying to do both of these things is ridiculous. To put a bunch of time into working on this because people can't get along and people haven't gotten along for years is, in my opinion, is unacceptable. So I want to come to an agreement, and to not let the taxpayers take the hit. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So I guess part of my speech tonight is to see if the commission has drawn a line in the sand that you will have a dispatch no matter what. I don't know that. The sheriff told me that. I don't know if that's his line that he drew in the sand, or it's your line, or it's together. So I would like to have that figured out tonight. If I'm wasting my time and my energy on trying to come to an agreement, and the county already has it made up what they're going to do, then we're wasting our time. And I don't think that's fair to anybody. So I would say there's three proposals that we could have, and the one is I just told you, and I think that the benefits of that is decisions would be made from Upton and from the sheriff and from Newcastle, and county already has a system bought. It's not a bad system. I think it's a good system. I've done some research about it. I think that it would accommodate everybody's needs. But then the city has the dispatchers already. We have an area that's ready to be hooked up, and we can start moving. And I am concerned about my employees. I think they're a big asset to our agency and the county, and to not take them into consideration, I think is not the right thing to do either. So giving them the area that they can see daylight, and it's not like it's midnight all day long, is a good thing for them. In doing this, I think all in all would save the taxpayers money. We all come together and we do a seamless transition into having one dispatch, new systems, and we move forward. The second proposal is we have two dispatches. City does their thing, the county does their thing. I don't know of any pros for that. I really don't. I sit around and try to think of some positive things that would bring this community, and I can't come up with any. And the other one would be county dispatch. They run it. Roles just flip-flopped. Then what do we do with our employees? The sheriff wasn't able to give me an exact how that would look. So, I don't think it's fair to 4 individuals in this community to fire them and say, good luck. So that's kind of where we're at. But I would like the citizens to know exactly what's going on, because it's your money that's being used. So I want you guys to know where my heart is on this issue, and it's public safety and taxpayers' money. So
So I guess to kind of ask, where is it that you guys stand? Are you guys have a line drawn in the sand? Is it the sheriff's got a line drawn in the sand? I mean, I guess, because when we hear your meetings, it's kind of, we're hearing things that aren't said at their meetings. And so we're not even in the same book, and that's a huge problem. So part of having these town halls is, let's get the transparency and being in the same book, let's get in the same chapter and on the same page. So where is it that you guys all
Sure. I'll start off with, I was not at the meeting with you guys, so I would kind of like to hear from Brian on his comments, and then I'll address, I've listed your concerns, and then we can go over them individually if you guys are okay with that. Brian?
Yeah, so the line in the side that the chief's talking about is us relinquishing the equipment that we purchased to the city to operate that. So that's the line in the sand, at least I was aware of. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I understand where he's coming from on the employees, and I told him I would chew on that. We could figure that out, I think, pretty easy. Ultimately, bottom line, I'm responsible for every citizen in this county. I think that dispatch should be 2 different answers to every citizen. With that said, I still 100% agree with Chief Bowles on setting up an advisory board, whatever you want to call it, for the 3 of us deal with those issues on a, probably like he said, every couple weeks, at least initially, and work it that way. So to relinquish the equipment was not. I just don't think that's the right thing. That's where that line is.
So, I have it right there, equipment. So, I don't think there's any lines in the sand. When you say lines in the sand, I have to agree with the sheriff. We had an issue when we moved, which caused a stir, as you're aware of, Pam, which I don't agree. We had a couple of former commissioners that had, Brian come over, and I don't like the way that was handled. And I don't believe any of the new commissioners, and probably the commissioners that aren't here, appreciated the way that was handled. But that is in the past. But we did have some questions on whose property was what, and did this belong to the county or did this belong to the city? Honestly, that is a concern for me too. We put brand new equipment in your building, and then suddenly 2 years later, well, that's our equipment, not your equipment. It will be county, whatever we come up with, that is county property. I don't know how we back it up with your system, or even if it's possible to back it up with your system. But it's a concern because we've kind of crossed that bridge before. I don't think it's a bridge that can't be crossed, and I don't think it's an issue that can't be fixed with the proper contract worked out with our county attorney and with your attorney. But there needs to be, in my opinion, even with the Joint Powers Board or Advisory Board or Student Council, whatever you want to call it, there needs to be a contract with teeth in it. In the past, unfortunately, I think we've had a lot of trading back and forth of attorneys, where the city, one year or 3 years it was a city attorney and then it was a county attorney. And frankly, I've made it clear that I think that's caused a lot of headaches between the two. Not that it's the only thing to blame, but there was a lot of knowledge that was kind of leveraged, if you will, between the two organizations, city and the county.
Hey, can I address that real quick?
Sure.
So that was in my proposal, and we talked about that. And I told the sheriff that I would like a contract that spells out everything. So there's none of this stuff that has happened in the past, and to have everything locked up. And let's do that. I mean, you can't break contracts, so let's write it good and have both attorneys sit together and look at it and write all their.
And I don't blame the city. I do blame the commissioners, us as a board, because we should not have let a contract expire. You guys take as much responsibility in that as you want to, but that was a failure on both of our parts. That should have never been allowed, and our county attorney at that time, or when that became expired, should have addressed it at that time, which goes back to those issues. Again, not pointing fingers, it was an oversight, but we got to fix it. The other concern I have is, as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have no backup generator system if you're in this new building, where our building.
We do have a battery system that runs dispatch.
Okay, so for each unit, you mean they have a floor battery backup system?
That runs it, and seriously, elaborate on that, but it runs it for a certain amount of time.
Okay, so we have a backup generator, which is what we're talking about, and able to back it up. So that was not a hurdle, but it's something we got to address. I mean, if the system goes down longer than 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever that battery life is, or whatever that is, that would be a concern. And maybe one that we address together. I don't know. The equipment, the training, the other side of it is I'm sure there's going to be some training needed for that new system, whether or not the current dispatchers are used or we get new dispatchers. The employees, we talked about this in the meeting before. As far as I remember, we were never putting the employees at risk. Now, like any job, employees, as far as, as a business owner, I bring in employees and I base them on performance, how their performance is. And I'm not questioning the performance of the dispatchers. They have a very hard job and they work very hard. But to me, that should be in the hands of the board, the advisory board, whatever you want to call it, in that hiring process. So I would think that you would have, as a group, and disagree with me if Brian's around here, but would have say in that, whoever's in charge of that committee. I'm also concerned if it was you just said it would be you, Brian, and of course the Upton chief, but I believe that there should be some representation for search and rescue in the fire department, and we've talked about that before too. Not because I want to overwhelm that board, because we've talked about having too many people on the board, and then it gets, nobody agrees on anything. So that would be one of my concerns is who's going to be on that board. I absolutely have always agreed that it should not be a commissioner and it should not be a city council member. The reason why the county does not want to take this over in whole is because we don't want the bullseye on our back just like you have the bullseye on your back. I don't think any system is perfect, nor do I think any agency is perfect. There's going to be flaws and there's going to be hiccups, especially with a new system. So it's always been equal say, and that would be my biggest thing that you guys haven't really addressed yet is you guys wanted the majority say based on your population and those type of things. And again, I think it can be worked out.
That's from back there, and what I brought to the sheriff was the three of us have the say in how it's ran.
Right.
The fire departments would come, to the respective representative, and they would be meeting on a regular basis.
Right.
So if there's something going on with the fire department, they come and say, hey, this is what's going on, and then as a team we address that.
Right.
I don't want to have so many people trying to make decisions because the decisions are never made. I mean, we're seeing that where we're at right now. So
Sure.
So keeping it, the police departments and sheriff's departments, they have the most dispatching. We're using it all the time. Not saying that the fire departments don't have a big say or search and rescue,
Mm-hmm.
but we use it every single day,
Right.
a lot, and so that's why I think that we know the ins and outs kind of dispatch, and so the fire departments come to with their concerns, and then we push those out to the employees.
Right. So I'd say probably the only hiccup that I have, and I'm only speaking for me at this point, the other commissioners may have comments, is where do we locate the dispatch? never wanted 2 dispatches, and I'm still adamant about the fact that should have never happened in the first place. And I appreciate the fact you guys want to use the new system simply because we really have never tested the updated system. The opportunity wasn't there. So I'm glad that we have that opportunity to do that. So I'll let the other commissioners comment on that further. But I don't see any hurdles, and when you call it line in the sand, I don't see anything that can't be overcome to make this work. As long as that's always been the sticking point. It's equal say, and making sure that board is held accountable so that we don't get into the situation we did this time, 10 years down the road, and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, we need another $1 million+ plus the renovations you guys did, plus the renovations that the sheriff's department has done. We've already spent in excess of money that we probably should have never spent.
I think on both sides, money's been wasted.
And I never said that we are innocent in this. We are not.
But no, I'm just saying, I mean, money's been wasted. We can't go back and fix the past.
Right.
Let's fix the future. And something that I want is something that when I'm dead and gone, that this system still runs smooth.
Right.
And
really, this should have been done years and years ago. We just haven't got to this point, and here we are. So we're basically getting it corrected. There's going to be some speed bumps, but I don't want to look behind us. I want to look forward. So,
Well, thank you. I agree with most of what Don said. As a new member, I haven't been as involved through the whole process. I've tried to go back and see what has gone on, and honestly, I've talked to a lot of people over the last year and a half or so, and no one can tell me why this has happened. No one can actually tell me why this has happened, which is kind of upsetting to me. So it's upsetting to everyone who lives here. It's this great mystery. The only thing I have a problem with putting our equipment into your new offices. You made the choice to move to your offices, and that was your choice. I've seen the crowding over in the county building. I understand that was needed. I don't have a problem with that. But in my mind, I still feel like a dispatch should be county dispatch. It should be considered county dispatch because it's not just Newcastle. And the reality of small rural areas is when things get really tight, I've noticed that police departments disappear, but sheriff's departments don't. That's a reality that's come across to a lot of counties around our area. And that's another reason in my heart, I feel like dispatch should stay county. It's still representative of Upton, Osage, all the rural area. And I think that's partly where there's been problems before is too much power going to just Newcastle. And I want just one dispatch, like all of us. I've not talked to one person who says, oh, for heaven's sakes, let's have 2 dispatches. How stupid is that? We all want one dispatch. But my main concern is I want equal representation for everybody in the county. And I have a fear that if we give you all our new equipment and it goes into the city office, things will change. I have that fear because of past history, I guess. I trust Sheriff Colbard to do the right thing. I feel like according to a lot of state law, and they don't specifically talk about dispatch, but it talks about a lot of the other things having to do with how we handle the law in our county. And so I guess if you want my opinion, I feel like it should stay in the county building, but I think we can work something out. Eric, your turn.
A question that I've got is, you mentioned the mystery here. Obviously, from some of the older ones that we've talked to over the years, they said that there's been issues with dispatch for quite a few years. And I understand if there's going to be a shared dispatch between the cities and the counties, there's always going to be some issue somehow, some way. But if it's a major issue to the point where we've considered branching into two, I still have yet to be explained why, what was the problem that pushed us to that?
I'll take that one. So the reason, so what you said a little bit ago, Vera, was about you didn't know why. Is the question why we split or we were taking our dispatch out of there? Is that the question?
I get
Why we're moving out of the building? Is that it?
Where and why this started. I mean, I know I can think back into the 80s. There's always been disagreements about dispatch, no doubt. But what was the catalyst? You know,
That drove us out of the
3-4
building,
years ago
right?
or whatever that started this.
Is that not? Am
Well,
I not hearing right?
The
Or?
definition would be considering joint dispatches, but maybe the move out of the building is part of that.
So okay, that's my deal, and I think there's a whole lot of people that don't know what happened, and I don't know why, but nobody knows.
When we went to the
So when we made the decision, we were having issues in the building with our dispatchers being uncomfortable with their workplace. So let's get them out of there. If it's a hostile work environment, why would you have your employees in a building that they're not comfortable in? So that's what I voted on, to get them out of there. And I don't know if it was, I think it was just a certain few police officers butting heads with deputies, and things just weren't going smoothly over there. But as far as I'm concerned, if you got people that are uncomfortable doing their jobs, they need to be out of there. And that's why I voted to move the dispatch. Now it's turned into a whole different ball game of, well, I want dispatch, but we want dispatch. That's not my concern. My concern is the safety of people. And I don't think that there's a lot of people that know that that's what happened. That's why we made the decision to pull them out of there.
I don't think anybody knows.
And then now it's like, we've been working this long trying to get this. I keep hearing this 50 pair thing, and we can't get the 50 pair from you guys to get the radio system to work. And it's like, we've waited too long for this, and it should have been smooth. And then you're talking about issues with dispatch. Is there an issue with the dispatch not working for deputies and police officers? I mean, is there an issue with that?
I'll take that.
Okay.
You guys came to us. This board came to our board and said, we need an updated dispatch system. We have officers and sheriffs in the field, and we could go back to the minutes, and you said that they were not getting communications. You said our system was obsolete and we needed a new one. You brought that to us.
Your system?
No, your system. You came to us as a commission and said, hey, we need to update our system.
Okay.
The other part of that is I hear this is the first time, and I've been to all the dispatch meetings today, this is the first time I'm hearing that dispatchers were uncomfortable in that building.
I'm just telling you, that's what I made my decision
Well, but
on.
you made that decision, but it was never brought to our attention that there was ever an issue with it. So don't you think that
That's
the
the-
opportunity should have been given to say, hey, how do we fix this together?
So you're telling me you didn't know that was going on over there?
We had this is the
Somebody
first
knew
time.
it. Somebody knew it. The people in the
Why
building
didn't you
knew
as
it.
city council and your employees bring it to our attention so that we did know about it?
We had a meeting on dispatch out at the lodge, and Jeannie Stone was presenting some options for dispatch. And my wife leaned over and asked me why we're even considering two. I said, I don't know, babe. So she asked the question. She says, why? We've got everyone here. We've got heads of all the departments. This would be the perfect opportunity to ask exactly that question, why? Because we need to know why in order to, in the future, develop a contract that is going to be workable with the city and the county and avoid the problem that caused what we're dealing with right now. We have to avoid that in the future. Otherwise, we will be back in the same boat in the future. And it was crickets. She says, why are we even considering two? And no one took the answer for that. So, thank you for some explanation on a little bit.
And to me, it's all been, since we made the decision, it's all been nothing. Nothing's been said after that. But that's what I based my vote on, is to move them out of there because they're uncomfortable. And maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't want to work in an environment like that.
But that's also a fixable problem if we would have known. That, to me, that's a fixable problem. If there's someone who's harassing others or doing something they're not supposed to do, whether they're a deputy or a police officer, there should be something done about that.
You think the dispatchers are going to go to you guys and say, hey, this is going on? And they're in that building.
Well,
They're in that
they would
building.
go to whoever is in charge.
They're in that building.
Policies.
They're not going to say anything to anybody that's in there.
At that time.
You should have come to us and said
At
something.
that time, Chief Keller was in the chief's position.
Yeah.
And there was, apparently Chief Keller and Sheriff Kovar were talking about the issues between, and this is what we're hearing from Chief Keller. So, and he's not here obviously, so, but Brian is. Chief Keller and the sheriff, obviously there was an issue with, an officer who is no longer with us. And a couple of deputies that are no longer there either. And Brian, please, Sheriff, please, jump in if I'm going off track here.
Yeah. The only thing off the top of my head, and Chief Keller and I discussed this in great length, was the officer you're speaking of, was constantly bullying my detention officer. So Chief and I dealt with that, and it didn't work out the way he or I thought it would. So I asked that particular police officer not be in the detention center without a supervisor. That I'm aware of. I had a deputy, kind of a deputy, a civilian employee that I'm aware of that did have an issue with a specific dispatcher. That was almost 10 years ago. That was under Jim Owens. And that was dealt with. We had a police officer that pulled a firearm on one of my detention officers, jokingly, but that was dealt with. So anything that was ever brought to any of our attentions was dealt with.
Well, part of the public safety issue and what was basically hostile work environment was the fact that the officer that we are talking about was not allowed in a certain part of the building. And if that officer worked nights and something was to be happening in that area, our officer did not have access to go back there and assist without having to take time away and go and get the code from someone to get back there. That's a liability that we saw as an issue. And between Chief Keller and Sheriff Kovar, it was going to stay that way. And that was something that was not sitting comfortable with the council and the employees at the police department. So that was another big aspect of why we thought it was a good idea to relocate. And also, even after the fact of that decision, I even asked the sheriff, what are your thoughts about us relocating? And he thought it was a great idea because the building is too small.
Agreed.
And it would give them more room and it would give our police department more room. Because if you've ever gotten a tour in there, it's almost like everybody's in a closet. And it makes it hard to get a job that needs to be done. So that was a big part of the actual moving it. The reason that it kind of went into the two dispatch thing was, yes, we were having, I think it was more radio issues than it was the CIS system because of the WyoLink and all the stuff that the state was into. And so I want to say it was Homeland Security that said issues about the radios. And so we were like, okay, and he brought the Motorola system to us, and it was like, there's no way we could just knock out $800,000 on this new system. And since we all work together, let's bring it to you guys. And so we came to you guys, and that's how this whole process started. The whole to dispatch thing, that all came from, I don't want to say all came from, but mostly came from your side. Because we were working on the one dispatch, but then it went to Joint Powers Board, and obviously, like you said, those commissioners aren't here anymore. But there was a lot of issues there, which kind of just got worse before it came to
No, I don't think the two dispatch came from more our side. It came from, we had it settled that we were going to try your system. We had it settled. The sheriffs were going to use your system, and you never turned it on and gave them the opportunity to try that system. So when we talk about safety and security, how long after we're reported that officers can't be reached, dead spots in the radio system, things like that, how long were we supposed to go? And by the way, this is going on for 2.5 years. Were we supposed to go when you said, we're using this system, that's what we're going with, and you never gave those other entities an opportunity to use that? So
Okay.
that is in the past, but I also remember getting with you in your shop down there and said, why are you moving? And you said, I'm going to try to quote you. You said, sometimes after a divorce, people get along better. But you never, ever told me there was any issues with any dispatchers other than the officers. That's the only thing you ever mentioned to me.
Well,
And I agreed with you that maybe that would work. But if there was uncomfortable people, we should have been told so that we could address that properly. It's another lack of communication, which is something we have to resolve even with the new system.
well, I'm sure it was brought up, but I'm not going to dwell on that. But when it came to the whole radio thing, the sheriff's department went over to Wyoming. Dispatch was not at Wyoming at that time. So the sheriff's department would have to switch back to repeater, analog, whatever, however that radio system works. So we ended up getting the whole new radio system, so we're all Wyoming. Wyoming, from what Chief Bridge tells me, doesn't work very well in Upton. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
If we can get repeaters in our patrol vehicles, we will have a little bit better access as far as being mobile. But in our buildings, our experience with our new radios was that it wasn't working. So we'd have to step outside.
It wasn't a dispatch radio issue, it was just the system, all different kinds of system, analog, the repeater, the Wyoming. It's gonna work different everywhere.
Right,
So
but
you
you
have
had the
to have-
opportunity to turn that system on for them. You and I were
Wait,
in that
but
meeting.
you're talking CIS, you're not talking.
I understand,
radio.
but you did not give them the chance to try that system out.
And we explained that to you multiple times.
You said they didn't have the radios, but they actually
No.
did have the radios.
No,
They
we
did
had-
have the radios.
It was at that time, in the beginning, they were waiting for their computers, we were waiting for the new server, which
And they had their computers.
Which, no matter what, doing this route or not this route, we had to get a new server.
Correct.
Okay, so at that point, when we said, yes, we wanna try these free updates before we spend $800,000, let's try these free updates. But we needed to put in the new server. The new server took time to get here, and in that meantime, we decided to move the PD. We weren't gonna set up a server and then take it down and reset it up again.
So again, you didn't give them
Exactly.
the opportunity to try that system out
Right.
and see if it was gonna work for
But
them.
once again, I would rather wait 6 months, a year, year and a half before
But
I
you did not
spend.
communicate that.
Yes,
You
I did.
said August 20th, you were gonna turn the switch on. I came to see you several times. You're like, yep, we're gonna turn it on, we're gonna turn it on. It never happened.
And we talked about it in one of your meetings, that we were waiting for the server. And that had nothing to do with us ordering it. It was at that time, with COVID and everything else, everything was being delayed.
Well, I guess we'll have to disagree.
Let's not.
Yeah, let's not get
dead horses. Because that's what's gonna happen. I want solutions. That's what I've been trying to do from the beginning. I don't have anything to do with what happened before.
Yep.
I'll be the first one to say the police department was in shambles. We still have a long way to go, but we're working very hard to get it where it needs to go. This isn't the old regime. I'm not a past chief.
Right. So our first stumbling block is where we put dispatch. So that's really where we're at. What did you guys propose? You wanted in yours. We told you our concerns, so how do we overcome those?
Like I told the sheriff, I'm willing to negotiate stuff.
Okay.
You know, there's payments for dispatch we've talked about. You know, it's been a concern on both sides here for months.
Sure.
Let's talk about some of that. You know,
My thought on that, on just like the payments portion of it is that's something that advisory council and board would sit down, look at what the past was. And it's still, I mean, we're gonna have to look at what it's gonna cost to maintain the system, even if it was a different system, so that we don't put ourselves in a hole again. So at least my hope is that the people that use it the most would be able to sit down and go, okay, here's what our expenses are on this, and this is what's coming up. How do we build this out in an appropriate way that's one, affordable for as much as we can for each entity, because that's an issue. Each entity, we're talking levels of money, for example. We all know that Upton doesn't have a ton of money, but they're willing to pay their portion as long as it's in the, we have to provide service for them no matter what. Just like you have to provide service if you're running dispatch. So to me, I'd hoped that advisory board would be able to determine what the fair amount would be.
we discussed some of the cost of dispatch during one of our meetings. The sheriff said he can run dispatch for $380,000 a year, roughly. So
The sheriff said $380,000 a year.
Roughly, those salaries and,
Okay.
that's based on Crook County's dispatch budget.
Okay.
And, another county, I think, so,
but I think the way to do this thing is, I'm with your concerns. I mean, I get that. And I told the sheriff this. If I was put in his position, no, I probably wouldn't trust the chief. But I can tell you, it's a new day in Newcastle. It really is.
Can I just make one suggestion? I gotta get going. I'm not opposed to any of that. I told you that I wasn't opposed to any of that, with a couple minor exceptions, as I don't think I was comfortable with giving the commissioner's equipment over. So if you have that proposal, could that be written down? Let this side look at it, put their comments in it, and at least get that part of it started, because over and over and over again, when these verbal conversations happen, it doesn't seem to come back the same way you and I expressed. Or maybe I didn't get my point across, or you didn't get your point across. Put it right. Not as a final draft,
And
just a
honestly,
draft.
that's what I wanted to do at our last meeting. And on the 11th or the 30th and the 3rd, and you weren't able to make those, and so we couldn't sit down and knock out numbers.
The last meeting, you know what I was up to? I was talking to sheriffs on school shooting. So, but can you do that? That's just a suggestion. I'm just throwing it out there. I think that makes a lot more sense, because at least if it's in writing and there's a question, that question can be asked, but it's not misconstrued. I mean, it can be misconstrued.
I don't know why we can't write a contract that says this is this, this is this, and this is how everything works.
Can I throw a question in there for both of you guys?
I was thinking more of a proposal at first, but when you call it what you want, something we don't have to.
Brian, you were saying 370,000 is roughly where you think.
380 is what Crook County operates theirs under. And part of the maintenance on our system, because our system piggybacks off of theirs, that's why I said a reduced rate, that did not include that reduction in services or in maintenance for that whole thing. We would split that cost with them. So, but that's what they gave you.
The reason why I'm asking is, so we're both on, is looking at total expenses that you guys put together from 2022, and it's at $552,231. So my guess is it's going to be somewhere in between both. If that's where you guys disagree with that, because I'm thinking 370 sounds kind of low. Maybe you know what I'm saying, based on what they're doing. I don't know if that's accurate, but I want to make sure that
that's just going off of, and I think we've had a copy of that budget floating around here.
But you're saying that doesn't include the cost of maintenance, right? So that would bump that up some.
Yeah. But not very much. I mean, it's like 20,000 a year or something like that.
Okay. Would you agree with that? Because that was the last estimate you guys had, that we seen up there is 552,000. So, I mean, that seems like a saving somewhere. I'm not sure where that is, but, and I would kind of question, that probably doesn't include renovations and all that stuff either, but I would hope it would be less, but I'm just questioning that amount.
This is Jeannie. Can I pipe up for just a second?
Right?
So just from a legal perspective, I'm trying, and I might have missed some of the conversation because I can't hear that well on this, but so I guess my questions are, is, some of the issues that need to get resolved are, where would the dispatch be located, which you guys are talking about? Whose employees would the dispatchers be? Would they be city employees, county employees, or would the 3 that are on this advisory board be the ones that would oversee the employees? Who would hire and fire those employees, which again kind of goes back to whose employees they would be. Whose equipment do we use, and is it a hodgepodge of some city equipment and the county equipment, or do we need to get some others? I'm just trying to understand the concept that it sounds to me like it's more like the city would operate as kind of what they're proposing, with an advisory board with the 2 chiefs and the sheriff, and then they would sit down and discuss any issues, and then the chief would go back and address those issues. I guess I think those are the things we need to get pinned down. Is it more like a joint powers board where the 3 individuals are the ones that hire, fire, they're their employees, that sort of thing? Or is it city employees or county employees with this advisory board giving some input?
I think that the joint powers board, when it was originally discussed, was, and I believe the question was asked, that would they receive their benefits, the county employees or the city employees? Would they get terminated? Would they get fired? Whatever that might be. And I believe that we had talked about that would not be the case, and that if it was the joint powers board, they would work under the county benefits and whatever benefits that they have now. If I'm wrong about that, Jeannie, correct me, but I thought that's what we discussed originally. And I hoped that the joint powers board would be responsible for the hiring and firing of those employees, because those would be the ones that would be obviously picking them, training them, choosing them, however that would go. But if there's questions about that, I think you're right, it needs to be answered. But I don't think it was ever the intention of the board to get rid of employees. It has to be manned full time, obviously, so those dispatchers are a guide.
The last meeting we were at, none of that could be answered because there was no board.
Chief Bowles, do you have a sense of what you're thinking? Are you thinking that they would be city employees that you would hire and fire and then just get input from the chief and the sheriff?
So the sheriff and I
or do you
talked.
see it as a collective?
We talked about that. I think now we have 4 full-time dispatchers. So, I think it would make more sense to keep them as city employees. And if the sheriff comes up and says, "Hey, I'm having a problem with this one, and this is why, and this is what's going on," then the 3 of us discuss that. And if it's a fireable offense, then we deal with that. And whoever the chief is would be the one that actually executes that. But it would go into the 3 entities coming together and discussing what the issue is.
So you're proposing that it's not really a joint powers board or advisory board, it'd just be 3 individuals that would determine.
It'd be the sheriff and the 2 chiefs.
Okay, so is there any legalities with, could that even be done? If let's say the equipment was in the county building, can we have city employees in there, Jeannie, wouldn't we have some liability on that? Isn't there? I don't know, you tell me, you're the lawyer.
I didn't quite hear your question, Don.
He wants to keep them city employees, which I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I'm just saying if we kept dispatch in a county building and we had city employees, wouldn't that have to be kind of put in the contract somehow? Almost like we're contracting a service?
That's essentially what they're doing now as city employees in a county space. I don't know necessarily that creates a huge liability, but certainly you would want to outline what the expectations are with using that space and that sort of thing.
So the city would still receive, if they're paying for their employees, that means a portion of the, whatever budgeting that advisory board has would have to be paid to the city for the cost of the employees, correct?
Well, I guess that'd be another question. Would the city continue to pay and then we just contribute a portion to them like we are now or should be now? Or would somehow we come up with a formula and do it more that way? So it'd be just, do we have a contract or do we have a formula and how would that look?
Oh, okay, I'm confused, but, if they're city employees, the city's going to pay them. So that means we're gonna have to put a budget together that would include paying the city to pay their employees, right?
Right. I mean, it's kind of what you guys have done now. It's where you were going to pay, $4,500 or whatever you currently do, or was in the last contract.
But that
So you
doesn't
just
pay salaries.
get another amount.
Yeah, that doesn't pay salaries. Maybe a portion of it, would, but there's a lot more than, that $4,500 a month to pay their wages.
I think that you guys have to sit down and figure out. I think at one point they were proposing that 38% of the total budget would come from the county and I think 12% from Upton. So whatever their total cost would be, it would be a matter of sitting down and coming up with that percentage, and then you guys would just help keep it there.
39, 48, and 13. Got it right here.
I have a question about the radio systems and the equipment. We put our neck out and bought a whole new system, and then we turned around and bought a new 911 system, which I understand is going to be desperately needed. It's going to be a great thing. So we put all that money. We put all that money out, and now it feels like you're just going to go, well, let's go ahead and bring your ball over to our court, and we'll just use it, and you can use it with us.
That's not my intention at all. It might look like that, but you know what? I was a little nervous coming to the council about, hey, I want to use the county stuff. I mean, I thought I would get my head handed to me. But you know what?
It's a question I have.
But I think that's the right thing to do. And I know you guys don't know me well, but I want what's best for our community. And I don't think
We're not just talking about this community. We're talking about the whole county.
that is exactly what I'm talking about.
That's
And
We're
I'm sick
talking
and
about
tired of the
everybody.
sheriff saying that. Because I run dispatch the way that I care about the person at the corner of Crook County that we have to dispatch to. And if something wasn't right, I would hold the dispatchers to the fire for that. And you can ask them. I go to Melissa all the time and say, we need this corrected, because it's not gonna, if they treat our deputies bad, I will burn them just like they treat one of our officers bad. It doesn't matter to me.
Chief Bowles, I don't think anyone's, I believe you care about the county. I think statutorily you understand that the sheriff is the highest land in the law.
I understand that.
All right.
But I've also,
That's what
I've
he's
also been
saying.
told too that, the city police department could just go away. And absolutely it could. It could, sure. But when you throw things out there enough, like, oh, it can just go away, then that's going to get everybody worried that the city police is going to go away. And I can tell you, I came from areas where that happened a bunch. And they had piss poor police services.
Well, I think that's a conversation for another day. The dispatch is the one we got to focus on. I totally understand that you care
But
about.
to throw that out there, and I've heard that numerous times,
Yeah.
to throw that out there to get the fear in people to say, oh, well, we got to go with the county.
I don't think it's a fear of the people. I think it's a reality of living in a rural area where we've seen it happen around us. We understand this possibility. I don't think it's a fear. I think we all understand that it could be a possibility. We don't know what the future's going to bring.
There's lots of possibilities.
The other thing
I tell my kids this. I mean, there's lots of possibilities that happen. But I could die tomorrow. You guys would have to find a whole new chief, and I hope that doesn't happen because
The other
poor
thing
guy.
I have a concern that it came out when we were discussing the workplace problems. Evidently, there was miscommunication between the police chief and the sheriff, and they were trying to handle it together maybe. and they probably were in disagreement. I'm worried that if you just have an advisory board of the 2 police chiefs and the sheriff, that when you have a problem like that, it's gonna be difficult to fix. I'm a really big supporter of joint powers board, to have even distribution of power and people on there who don't really have as much skin in the game as you do, or the sheriff does, but they still use the system and understand what's going on and what's needed. And I really don't understand why the city has a problem with the joint powers board. Because I think in the end, having a few more voices in there that are more neutral parties and yet understanding the system, it could be a phenomenal thing.
It could be. I've been in this community since December 5th, and I found that for whatever reason, this community can't get along.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the joint powers board thing, didn't it involve us signing a check for $800,000 or half of that or whatever it was?
No.
No,
I thought it was for the dispatch system.
well, that was for the dispatch system that they just bought
Right.
for almost $800,000.
And we didn't have the money to spend for that.
No.
Right?
Did you write out a check for it now, though? No. You
No,
already
it
bought the
wasn't, it
system.
wasn't that. Okay, so that's kind of backtracking to when there was other commissioners on there. And we did go in and we were gonna go ahead and pay for half that system. But we were waiting on an invoice or something before we just wrote a check. Okay, and because we didn't get that invoice, we didn't write a check or whatever, the voucher, whatever it may have been. And then at that time frame, we found out that the system that we currently had the similar things that the Spillman has for free that we wanted to try before we spent the money, so we rescinded that motion. Because we wanted to see if it would work before we spent the money. And that's where Commissioner Taylor is talking about that we've never tried it yet because we didn't set up a server, download it, to move it, and all that stuff, so.
But with the joint powers board, what makes me nervous is that you have too many people and then no decisions are gonna be made. If you keep it tight with 3 individuals who do have a lot of skin in the game.
Well,
And
there's a reason we have 5 commissioners instead of 3. Because there's a history there that 2 out of 3 can become your powerhouse and the other one's always outvoted. So possibly 5 people, you have somebody possibly from the fire department or somebody from the Osage area, or, in there to even it out, so you don't have just maybe 2 police chiefs. You 2 police chiefs might decide you want something and leave the sheriff out. It sounds stupid, but those things happen.
So before you were on the commission, we tried doing the meetings with joint powers board and whatnot. Stone and myself, we talked quite a bit, and as Commissioner Taylor stated, we both agreed that there shouldn't be commissioners on it, there shouldn't be council members on it. It was too many chiefs and not enough Indians on that board, and that was part of the red flags that we had as a council, that we stepped back a little bit. Then, it was present us a contract. And so we presented a contract, and Commissioner Todd stated that he did not like the fact that what his percentage was, or what we had in the kind of like the start of a negotiation of a contract. And we kept stating that would be your 37%. And so with him stating that he didn't like it, he didn't want it, it would be this much over a certain amount of time, that kind of bothered us as well, because that would have been the county's portion. So if he was already complaining about that, it just made it, there was a lot of red flags that we saw that we didn't want to go forward. So then it turned out that the clerk and myself attended meetings that Homeland Security set up. And then when we went in there trying to ask questions, no questions could be answered because there was no board to answer those questions. So I wasn't gonna say yes, and I don't know if the whole council would have said yes to something we didn't have any answers on. We needed someone to put a board together and present, the foundation of what it would have entailed before we would have said yes to the joint powers board.
And I agree with you on that, on that portion of it, but I think, from my perspective, I think it was said that we were going to form this board, and that board was going to figure out what those guidelines were going to be, so that, again, the commissioners weren't involved, city council wasn't involved. I think at one time they had it up to 13 people, which we thought, you and I thought was ridiculous.
Yes.
That was too many people, but I do agree with, I'm okay with the 3. I'd rather see the fire department, search and rescue, whatever. I'd like to see that maybe even in the ambulance, one of those members on that board as well, because they're still an important part of the community. They're highly involved with dispatch, but I think that's something that we can overcome. I think the biggest hurdle we're at is where we put the dispatch. I think that if we can get that settled, maybe Garrett has some thoughts on that, but I feel like dispatch, one dispatch is necessary, but I think that it should be in the county building at this point. I have no problem with the chief and the chief running it. I have no problem if it can be worked out contractually, putting a good contract together that has teeth on both ends for us and for you. I'm not even I'm afraid of the cost, because I think we've determined that the last system that we did not put enough aside to take care of our dispatch in the first place, or we wouldn't be where we are now. So I don't think it's going to be cheap at any level. So
well, just like I definitely would want to see in the contract what we put in that one that we presented to you guys. If you look at number 8 in that contract that we presented, it stated that I'm just going to read the paragraph. I mean, this is just something we threw at them to start negotiation. It said the city agrees and shall provide dispatch and communication services. It's inclusive of teletype services to the county sheriff and county emergency management, Homeland Security, for a monthly service fee to be paid by the county to the city based upon the 2021 dispatch cost and percentage of the county residents of 37%, the total dispatch cost. Said fee to be the sum of, at that time, $17,027 per month. This amount includes a 10% equipment replacement cost. The CIS civil process module, CIS detention module are also included in this total by July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. The monthly service fee shall be billed by the city to the county in accordance with the customary billing procedures of the city and the county. I think in all past contracts from our forefathers, never had any amount from that percentage or from the payments that were made to the county put away in a separate line item for a situation like we came into. So that was something that would definitely need to be in the contract, that no matter what percentage, what entity pays, a percentage of that percentage gets put away for upgrades, new equipment, repairs, whatever.
well, and I think that this contract, if we were going to do it that way, would have to be one for the county, one for the city, and even one for Upton, with whatever percentages what we're talking about, because that, in my mind, that council would be in control of that money and pay their bills accordingly, whether it would be whatever's owed for the city employee, if the dispatcher state city employees, that would, I mean, that's not including that number, I assume, or maybe it is, I don't know. But you're talking, do we need any more dispatchers? I mean, as far as all we would
No,
need, like I said, I
We
look at,
need more than 4.
well, that's what I'm saying is, I look at the total cost that you guys spent, and Brian, which I'm sure he's trying to get as close as he can, and I'm hoping that it's somewhere in the middle, but I expect it's going to be more than 370. And it's probably going to be more than the 521 that you did spend. So each entity would have to have a contract. And this would no longer be the city agrees. It would be that entity, dispatch entity, whatever that would be. Do you guys agree with that, or?
There needs to be a better contract. Like I said, you guys and us, we can't fix what our forefathers did or didn't do. And like the chief said, you know, we gotta start looking at today, tomorrow, and a couple months and a year from now. And, I mean, just like Jeannie said, we gotta get all these things kind of down. I know from the benefit aspect of it, from what I hear from county employees and city employees, that the city's benefits are way better than what the county benefits are. So, I mean, these are a lot of things that need to be clarified.
Absolutely.
So,
I know, like I said, I'm not opposed to it being them city employees, but it all has to be put in the contract and worked out. I think, like I said, the start of this needs to be is where is it going to be located? And that then everything else can be built from there.
I know I've talked to several of our dispatchers, and they will not stay in the county building.
Okay, and again,
And the reason behind that, and I don't want to throw it all out, but there was sexual harassment that happened in the county dispatch building, and it was not totally dealt with.
okay, and
So,
and that's
I mean,
I can't confirm or deny.
That was
This is the first time I ever heard of it. So, and I don't even know if I was involved at that time or whatever. I do know that we've had many meetings, and you can see from this book of all of the workshops we've had, and I have never. This is the first time I've heard about it. I have heard about the officers' disputes.
The sheriff should have brought it to your attention.
Yeah, well, maybe he should have. But the first I'm hearing about it, but I spoke to our sheriff, and he said the only thing he's heard of is officers. So that's something that
Well, I said, I did say civilian employee.
Okay.
I don't do that. That's the most recent.
But I didn't know it was anything about sexual harassment or anything about that. That part is irrelevant. We should still be able to work it out and have the opportunity to work it out. And this is the first that I've heard anything about sexual harassment or any of that. I knew there was a dispute with sheriffs and police officers. Yep.
So added to that is when we made our decision, it was brought to our attention that the dispatchers felt uncomfortable in there. And obviously we had some officers that were contributing to the issue that we were dealing with. At the time, there was door codes that were changed that prevented the dispatchers to go different places in there to kind of escape. I personally called the state fire marshal's office during that time to have them start an investigation and come up to resolve it. In the meantime, it got resolved so that they could have access the way I understood, but it had nothing changed. The state fire marshal was going to come up and try to review that and correct that situation, that they did not have multiple exits out of that building was part of that issue.
But we still don't have the back door code, so we can't go out the
So
back
out the
door
back
if we
door
need
still
to
is-
without a detention officer.
So if they don't have multiple exit routes out of that.
Well, I think we have to remember it's a jail. Access is going to be limited. It's not a building where you can come and go as you want to. It's a secured facility.
There is fire codes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, those things need to be addressed and not taken away from it. This is just the first one.
okay, so, you know, I'm gonna make a little defense here for, you know, we hire Brian's an elected official.
Mhm.
We hire our department heads. And we don't wanna micromanage our department heads, probably just like you guys don't wanna micromanage yours. And, you know, Chief Keller was in that position, and Chief, you know, when we would get updates from the chief, he said the sheriff would be handling A, B, and C. So we have to rely on what we're getting from the chief at that time, and if the chief says that the sheriff's handling a situation, that's all we know. And if we find out that he's not, then find out what our department head is doing at that time. So Chief Keller would say that the sheriff was taking care of the situation. So if the sheriff's not relaying to you, then maybe he's got whatever situation under control.
Well, I do want to say that I've known Brian for a while now, and he's never not told me something that has gone on. So I'm not sure of the situation, but I still say that it could have been addressed, maybe handled better. Maybe that is a fault on both sides again. There seems to be a lot of lack of communication, but I don't think that there's any hurdles that can't be fixed here. I think we've gone down the road with where I am at. I think we've gone down the road. You were well aware we had a commissioner send the sheriff over at 10 o'clock at night because we were arguing over whose equipment was whose. We've made a big investment. We have not asked for anything from you guys for that investment. And I think as a county commissioner, my priority should be to the constituents, but it should also be to county assets, and that's a county asset. So I would like to see it stay in the county building, I'm going to support the sheriff on his position of wanting it there simply because it is a county dispatch. Whether the city ran it or not, it still provides to the entire county. So if we could work that out, I'm fine with negotiating city benefits. All those things can be overcome. Garrett, do you have any thoughts on this?
I don't know. It's a lot to process. I'm kind of putting it together. I guess I just got to be honest and say that for the law enforcement entities, I'm a little disappointed in knowing that maybe this was an issue that we had with dispatch. I'm not focusing in on county over the city or vice versa. But to me, law enforcement is there to protect and serve. And if we've got these kind of problems going on in our own office and our own departments, when we claim that we're going to go out on the streets and take care of some of the issues that are going on in our county and our cities, that's hugely disappointing to me. We're talking about fiscal responsibility. We're at a point right now where we need to make a decision that is fiscally responsible, which I'm leaning towards the number one that Officer Bowles had presented. Just for the fact that we've got information that's been provided, and it's been more than just one thing. This has been an ongoing thing. Radio problems that added to it. Issues with employment in the offices. To me, that should have been a personnel issue. That should have been dealt with individually. And you're hired to do a job. If you're not doing your job, you got to go. And I'm not favoring anyone. It could be a relative of mine. If you're not doing your job, you got to go. That should have been a personnel issue, in my opinion. With the radio side of it, it sounds we've got the new system. So if we can utilize that and enter into an agreement that is cohesive with Newcastle, Upton, and the county, that would be wonderful. That's how I see it. But like Pam said, we can't change some of the things that have happened in the past, but we can damn sure learn from it. We might not be able to change it, but if this is what happened, if this is what they did, and this was the outcome that we got, let's not do that again. We can learn from that.
And that's exactly what I want to do. And I want to have a good contract that protects the county, that protects Upton, that protects the city. I mean, I don't know why we can't come to that agreement. And we move on with a good, tight contract for everybody, and we don't have to have these meetings again and waste our evenings.
We'll get to the public in just a minute, okay?
I can see the specifics coming out of this contract, and there are going to be a lot of gears and details to the contract. I understand that, but if this is our main goal, we need a contract that if it's going to be a little ouchy for all three to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and sign this because it's equal to all three, and it's necessary to provide this service of safety. That's probably where we need to get. we got a rope that we're pulling. Hey, we want to pull it on our side a little bit more, and then they're pulling back over there. And when the smoke clears, who actually wins? Well, hopefully, it's our residents of our community because it's still a service that we provide. That's who should win.
And really, I mean, I don't care if the dispatch is in here or not. My personal opinion. But I think we have a place that's already renovated that has windows. I know that sounds stupid, like it's got windows, but if you're stuck in dispatch, I mean, go in this closet and sit in the closet for 12 hours. It sucks. I couldn't do it. Sometimes I just gotta go and drive around the city and get some fresh air. And they can open the windows and they can have some, see society. And so that's what I'm looking at. And it's not about being in the county building. For me, it's not. Our dispatchers who have to work there, they have, obviously they have some issues about working there still, but I don't. I mean, that's why I think it's a good idea to bring it over here. I don't know what it's going to take to hook up the new system, but let's hook it up and let's get rolling. And, they can renovate the whole area up there and however they want for the sheriff's department. But I think we have an area that we can get rolling on right away. And I don't know why we wouldn't utilize that. And let's have it in the contract. When we're all gone, our kids that are probably in the same situation, let's present that. Just like you were saying, let's write a contract so we're good to go.
So is this something where we're at a point right now where the two chiefs and the sheriff could sit with the two attorneys and work on this? I mean, that's where I feel like we are at as a city. Is that something that the county and the sheriff are willing to sit and do? Or, I mean,
If it's truly going to be a board and they're going to be running it, then it needs to be, each entity needs to have its own individual contract.
Chief Rich,
We're basically
is
contract.
that where you're comfortable at right now?
I couldn't hear everything that was said.
So what I'm saying is I feel like right now, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the census is that we're comfortable with the two chiefs and the sheriff sitting together with the county attorney, the city attorney, which happens to represent the town of Upton as well, sitting down and putting a concrete contract together that has teeth in it for all three.
I'm comfortable with it. I would have to get the go-ahead from my city council. I can't do anything without their nod.
Understandable.
I don't personally have a problem with that, as long as we're all in it together.
And that's what it needs to be. I mean, we all need to serve and protect the whole county. I mean, we just talked the other day with Chief Ridge about how we could better serve their town from the city as well as the sheriff. So,
because there's been a lot of downfall or a lot of shortcomings with law enforcement over the years. I mean, Susan hasn't been able to be backed up for stuff in the city years ago, and there's a lot of things that need to be worked out. And my goal is to work all those out. I might fail, but I'm going to sure try. And I think our citizens deserve that.
I can tell you when we had the SWAT call go through our county like it did several other counties in Wyoming as well as other states, if these three can work as well as they did with that swatting call, I have no worries. The way that all these entities came together that Monday, it was absolutely amazing. There was no issues that I saw. We learned a lot, but.
And really, the police department, the Newcastle Police Department, and the sheriff's department, I haven't had any issues. We work good with them. We did search warrant stuff at the high school yesterday. They helped us out. They did stuff. We did stuff. That's what it's all about. And I will work very hard to continue those relationships. I don't like to have discord discord between people. I don't like that.
I think the sticking point is gonna be where it's located, and I think as commissioners, we have to allow our sheriff to make that decision, because he is, as I said, he's the highest law on our land by law. And so I think, as you go forward with that, we would probably lean on Brian for that decision.
And I also
I'm just
feel like
speaking for
Brian's
myself, but-
been dealing with this the longest and probably has the most experience out of the, not that you guys aren't great, but
Then I mean, if we're going that route, I'm done. And I can tell you that. I have dealt with this enough over the last 4 or 5 months. Because when I call meetings and he doesn't show up, he calls me an hour before and says, hey, I can't make it. It gets really frustrating on this end.
I totally understand that, but when I got something that's more important than a meeting with you out there on the street, I deal with that, just like that swatting call.
You had canceled you had canceled our meeting that morning an hour before that swatting call came out.
Came to Newcastle. That swatting call was happening in Bridger, Montana, it was happening in Buffalo, it was happening in Sheridan, it was happening in Campbell County, and it was happening in Campbell County as I got off the phone with the Sheridan sheriff when I called you. So, yeah.
When you canceled the meeting at 7:47 that morning.
Exactly. Bridger Teton got their call.
You called me at 9:10. Our call came in at 9:11.
Bridger, our call did, yes. I hear the calls coming across the state. And so when I hear other counties are dealing with these calls, I want to know if this is
So you
something
actually sent me a text and said I can't make it.
I said I'm tied up at the moment.
Okay, so you could have said, hey, we're having these swatting calls come across the country. I mean,
So I apologize, Chief. I mean, it didn't work out the way you wanted, but
because if I would have heard that, I would have had guys sitting at the high school.
Right.
Because as soon as I hung up from you, I went in and said, you guys need to go to the high school.
And see,
our call came in.
And those calls are coming over the radio left and right. We monitor in our patrol vehicles. We monitor those radios all the way up to Sheridan, and that's where I was getting that information. It was coming over the highway patrol radio, and so I told the sheriff up there that's what I was doing.
Okay, so,
But yes, I have no problem sitting down with you and working out this contract.
okay. So,
but we're talking location.
Yes, well that too.
well, if the three of you can get together and work on these and work on the stuff that needs to be put into a contract with the city, the town of Upton, and the county attorneys, can we do that? Can we?
There are two poles. I hear what you're saying, you're done, but it sounds to me like you're saying if it's in the county building, you're done with it. Which to me I have a problem with, because I've been in that building for years.
I know. This is what
And
I'm.
that's why we're moving out.
This is what I'm done with. Is I'm done with trying to negotiate. If he's already made his mind up, there's no negotiation. It's going to be in the county building. So if we're not negotiating at all, then why am I putting my effort into it?
I think this is what this is about, is if the commissioners, it's their equipment. They purchased it.
No, it's the public's equipment.
Well, what I'm getting at.
It's the public's equipment.
And we're here tonight to put our back down.
And now, if I may, I would like to address your
You
concern.
guys are dancing.
Did you not say you're worried about the equipment? If it moved to the city office, is your concern that we're just going to say, well, hell, it's ours now, and we can just shut your switch off? Is that what you're concerned with?
Well, they're not necessarily that, but it's clear from past, with contracts and things that have happened in the past, those kind of things have happened.
So,
I mean,
but moving forward, just like you were talking.
It's like we
Just-
paid
yeah.
$4,500 a month, and then all of a sudden we were supposed to pay $17 without a new contract. Those things happen.
No.
But don't you think in the
A contract or negotiations.
It was not a signed contract that everybody agreed on.
No,
And so
what
these things happen with all the
Commissioner
a lot of miscommunication.
Commissioner Hubert, there was not a signed contract. So we went back and did what we needed to do if there was a signed contract, we gave notice. I think it was 3 month notice?
Yeah.
We gave a 3 month notice stating that we were gonna start billing accordingly.
It's
Because
it's just like a rental lease, you can't, as a landlord, you can't change the rent until you have a new signed contract, which we were still evidently negotiating
No,
with.
there was never a negotiation. That we
So you
gave
was
a
gonna
contract.
give a new price.
We
That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I have concerns about how this
You
is
weren't,
all
you weren't
going to
there.
play out.
You weren't there. We handed
This is Jeannie.
Jeannie, give me 1 second to
I
finish.
think
on,
we're
Jeannie.
just kind of getting back.
Jeannie,
back
hold
to
up.
this.
Hold up, Jeannie.
So we were asked to produce a contract. We produced one to start negotiations. And that's when, we emailed it, we brought it to the commissioners. And Commissioner Todd, who's not here, but there's many people in this room that was there, took the contract and threw it to the side. And then it was, we're getting the equipment and I don't know, do you wanna, you were there?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was stuff that was before you were there. And we can't fix those things.
I
We
understand
need to
that,
go from.
but he asked me what my concern was, and that was just an example, okay? That was an example of the miscommunication and the back and forth. If we don't have things completely straight, we just spent a whole lot of money on this new equipment. And it kind of sounds to me, I'd be interested to hear what they say, but it kind of sounds to me like, well, we made this really nice new building. Go ahead and bring your new equipment over and we'll use it. So I have some concerns about that.
I understand your concerns, and that's where I think having a contract with T for all 3 entities, plus the other entities, EMS, fire, that's where we have to rely on the 2 chiefs, the sheriff, and the city, the town, and the county attorneys.
And just to clarify on that, Jeannie and Mike would never allow, under just basically how this is panned out, for us to have a contract that didn't basically state who owns what, if it was that building. And I'm sorry to speak for you, Jeannie, I already know that you guys would definitely not allow us to do that. So. And it would just spell out basically that equipment is the property of the county, period.
Well, we can't make any decisions tonight, but, you know, if Brian wants to go ahead and get with everybody, right?
We need a time frame.
We need a time frame.
We need a
That's
time
great.
frame.
That's
We
a
need,
great place to start.
okay, and so the other thing I was telling Chief Bridge on Monday and Chief Bowles was that there is that lack of transparency between all entities. And one of my suggestions that I even talked to the council about was to have a quarterly town hall meeting with Upton, with you guys and the council, so we can keep that transparency open. And I know we're up for it. I know Mayor, I'm gonna say his name wrong. Trendall was up for it, and I would hope that you guys were up for it, because the past and the bickering and the brick walls, that's gotta come down for us to unite and go forward. So we can start with a quarterly town hall just to get together and see where you guys are at, where we're at, not just on dispatch and law enforcement, but on the whole county as a whole, on the Upton town, Newcastle City, and the Weston County. We need to start doing that. And I think we won't be, if we can be proactive, we won't be in this kind of situation down the road. Or at least really hope not to be in this situation down the road. So I hope you guys are open to that. But I really do believe that Chief Bridge, Chief Bowes, and Sheriff Covard, and may it be Stoken or Stone and Dublin or Mark, they have dates and they stick to those dates unless there is a huge emergency that someone can't attend. But those meetings have to take place, or we're gonna just be doing this cycle over and over and over. So I know you said yes to doing it. I know you said that once you talk with your council, you'll be able to or not. And I know the sheriff said yes. So can we do this? Can we get to this point where we can find out location, we can find out all the details, we can have the start of a negotiation contract that's worked up between the attorneys that benefit all?
My only
Next week,
Huh?
shoot for next week for a meeting with everyone, with the 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's the only thing I ask, is that both attorneys are there when we do it, so we can hammer something out.
And I'd be really interested to hear what these guys have to say.
Okay, so Sheriff, hold on, Sheriff Kohler, do you have anything you want to state before I open it to the public? Chief Ridge, anything? No. Okay.
So
Okay.
So I'm at a little bit of loss here. Does the city currently have a dispatch system?
Yes.
Yes. And the county has one?
Yes.
So if we were to come together, which one goes back in canon? Or
Well,
are
I
we
do
putting the
believe-
two together?
I do believe that, that the commissioners did look into, or at least Commissioner Taylor and the sheriff looked into it. There's a 30% to 40%,
40%.
40% restocking fee, which would be ridiculous and a waste of money to restock it.
Not to mention, their system is untested and ours has a 10-year guaranteed updatable system.
Right. So one of them's gonna sit.
Correct.
Correct. So then we got one for backup, whatever. So is there a problem with the city going halvesies with the county? Now it's our system, like it already is. But that
You
way
gotta
there's
remember
skin in the
that there's
game.
Upton too. So
Okay, up and
please
kicks in
remember
there too. My thoughts are, listening to everything that's come out so far, there's issues with it in the county building, with the employees. We want a safe environment for them to work in. There's issues with door codes because yes, it's a jail. This building isn't. Who else would be in here besides the dispatchers? Maybe chief coming and going, maybe the sheriff coming and going,
the police department.
city employees, but no concerns for exits, anything like that. So if we were to go halvesies or reimburse for half of the system, put it in the city building, I mean, at least we're gaining ground with happy employees, comfortable employees, doing away with the concerns of people in jail getting out, whatnot. I mean, just throwing something out there. I just don't understand why we can't come together on it.
My concern, my concern,
Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. He's going to the podium.
Excuse my back, sorry, to the attorney factor. My name is Stanley Jasinski. Is that on?
No, probably not.
All right, so I appreciate you letting me address this town hall. I've heard some people say they're done. I think we the people are done too. All right, so over the last year, there was a city council town hall a public hearing to get our voice, our opinion on what the public that paying for all this wanted. And the county commissioners had the same thing. And since then, we had another one. And it's clear between all you and all us that essential dispatch is the best thing. Right? I love public safety. I was between my father and myself in the city where I was fired. He was law enforcement for over 60 years between us. So, what I'm here to say is that you were given a mandate, not just the town council and the county commissioners, but the department heads that are involved in all this, to come up with essential dispatch. Before one dime was spent, that should have been the guidelines, the structure for that essential dispatch should have been figured out. Okay? Before one dime was spent. Now we're up tens of $100,000. Everybody's worried about the equipment. And Councilor Downing, he got it. It's our equipment. It's not your equipment. All right? It's not your equipment. It's these people's equipment. We want essential dispatch. You want to know where to put it? Put it in the Weston County Fire District building. All right? That way, and then you put the fire chief on the board. Then you got 4, and then you got not just all law enforcement. You got fire. You got all the concerns about people coming in being locked up. All that's gone. You put it there. You use the joint equipment that we already have. I believe the center is not just the best way to serve the folks of Weston County, but it's also could be a source of job opportunity. As it's mentioned, you're going to have, I imagine, I don't know if you work at 12-hour shifts or what, but if you work in 3 shifts, that's 2 people a shift. There's plenty of opportunity for employment. So, this has gone on long enough. And sorry, again, to the attorneys, but personally, I don't think they should be part of this process of drawing up the contract. And the contract's drawn up, you can present it to the attorneys on both sides, they can review it. And if there's any problems or any legalities that you may have missed, that's when they would chime in. Sorry, that's just my opinion on negotiating. Attorneys to me have gummed up this whole works. Part of it, not all told, but part of the reason why this is all. And before I close, I'm going to read you something. It's out of here. Right? You all probably, I know you raised your hand and took an oath and swore to abide by this Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. And I'm going to read you just one section. And it's on page 1, because that's how important it is. And recites a preamble. Article 1, Section 1. The power inherent in the people. All power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, their safety, and their happiness. For the advancement of these ends, they have at all times an inalienable right, which means I have a right that was given to me by my Creator. It's not capable of being annulled or voided or undone. And the feasible right, a right that can't be restrained or repealed by human laws. No, that's an inalienable right. Not capable of, okay, you got right. To alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they think proper. What has happened here is the leadership in this county, in this city, and whatever, has failed we the people. Okay? You failed. And you're making excuses here. If you draw up the contract, all the rest of it, if you build it, they will come. If you draw up the contract, you'll figure out the salaries, you'll figure out all the stuff that you're hashing back and forth here. It'll fall into place. That's how it works. First, you come up with the contract. And you're talking more meetings. Once you decide here tonight, and you can do it, And I'm just going to go on the record that say Commissioner Wagner and Commissioner Todd are not here in this most important meeting. And this is the second one that Commissioner Todd has missed. And I was there when he missed the first one. He said, you know what I think? He can speak for me. That was the other one. All right? I see everybody in the town council except for one thing. So, enough is enough. We the people have spoken. Get it done. Or we will. We'll set up a civilian dispatch. How's that? We'll have a civilian board to oversee it. If you don't do it, we will. Thank you.
You know, my only comment is I'm new to this area, and my only comment is, you know, I thought I lived in Weston County as well as the city, and it makes me really nervous that Weston County and the city can't work together. I mean, that's scary to me because I thought I was both, and that's just what I wanted to say. I don't live in the city, but I'm still Weston County.
Agreed. Sorry. Carrie.
Well, I've been sitting here listening to all this discussion, and I'm really trying to make sense. Why do we have to have two entities? We are a small town. We're not a rich county. Why do we have to have a sheriff's department and a police department? I don't understand. There are counties where they have one, and it does work. And if you set it up to work so that you're addressing the city people, what they need as well as the county, because we're all part of the county, why is it, convince me why it's important that we have two entities, because I don't understand. It's not making sense to me.
There's several towns that have gone just to sheriff's department. Sundance is one of them. Custer is another one of them. And a couple, oh gosh, I don't know how many years ago it was, the Newsletter Journal, Bob Bonner came in and there was that talk of eliminating the police department or just the sheriff's, something several years ago, I can't remember. A lot of calls went to those entities by civilians that wanted to know how it worked. A lot of those towns said they regretted it because, one, it's too expensive to bring back their law enforcement. Ordinances aren't being enforced. And then what can you speak on Sundance behalf or things that you've noticed in Sundance?
So one of the things primarily, and this isn't trying to impute the same sort of thing to the sheriff's department here in this county. I have no idea if they would do the same thing. I suspect they probably wouldn't. There has been issues with basically the city ordinances being enforced. And by enforced, I mean every single one of them.
As in dog catchers? Or
That,
keeping your lawn neat, or what city ordinance?
Well,
They said that
but there's other
Because
things
you've got
that are-
city employees that still overlook those, don't you? There's no city employee that's in
Well, there
charge
was
of
just
the
saying
dog
you could have the
catchers?
city employee, but I mean, they don't have the authority to go in and cite the ticket for said ordinance violation, right? Your city engineer, for instance, can come in for certain things and state that they're in violation, but say that their dog's running loose or that this has been one of the bigger problems is you'll have, vehicles piling up in certain places within the city that someone needs to do something about. And obviously the city can, once they've noticed it, but there's just a lot of city ordinances that are enforced. Now, whether or not that would be the same thing here, I have no idea.
Isn't that a communication issue with it's not being enforced? You let the entity that has enforcement power know. And they, if you combine, you don't lose numbers. We still have as many officers, which I understand we're having trouble keeping officers, having enough officers. But don't you still have officers that would deal with that? Even whether it comes out of the sheriff's office or out of the city council office? I'm just trying to make sense of this because it seems like we're doing duplication. And And it feels like a lot of adolescents fighting over who's going to be king of the mountain. Honestly.
Bingo.
And I'm really, and you don't get anywhere because king of the mountain only lasts for so long and somebody else gets king of the mountain. I mean, really. So you've got one wheel stuck in the mud all the time because you're fighting between the entities instead of being an entity, which is providing a service for all of us. So somehow, I'm having trouble making sense.
That's kind of like why I mentioned that quarterly town hall, just so we can get that relationship back and that transparency back and that unity back. Not just for the whole county, which the city falls in and the town of Upton falls in and Osage falls in. And Osage gets left out a lot. But, that needs to be fixed. I mean, a lot of this is from our forefathers, like I said, and we can't go backwards. We can only go forward. And I think we need to be more transparent and be able to work together. And we got to start somewhere, and this just happens to be the topic that it's starting with. But yes, but there is issues with other towns that have just gone to shit. And we're not going to go that route.
But you, okay. Doesn't make sense to you. Okay. Carrie.
That's good.
So, to this woman's point, you live in the city and you are part of the city and the county, but I live in the county, so I'm not part of the city. I'm only part of the county, and that's the case with a lot of people in this room. So I think the number one thing that you're missing when you're talking about all the logistical issues will work out, where the building is located and whose equipment it is. That will work out. The number one problem is going to be who's in charge. And if the three of you, the two chiefs and the sheriff, are running the dispatch, I don't have a problem with that because you're the best people. You know the most. You're the most knowledgeable about what needs to happen with dispatch and what needs to happen with law enforcement. But at the end of the day, if the three of you have a disagreement, we have to know who's in charge and who has the final say. And it has to be the sheriff, because if it's the city, that leaves the whole bunch of us out. The only way for it to work is to have the county in charge being the number one. You can run the logistics in the city, that's fine. But at the end of the day, who makes the final call, who is in charge? It has to be the county. Because I have no control over you. I have no control over Chief Bridge, but I can unelect the sheriff. And he's elected, and you guys aren't. That's why the county has to be in charge.
To work 2.5 days a month. And your sheriff doesn't have to show up to meetings. If I don't show up to meetings, they'll fire me.
If you don't show up to meetings, I have no say. I will have no say this year, no say next year, no say next year, no say next year. If the sheriff doesn't show up for work, in a couple of years, I have a say.
And see, we have council meetings twice a month, just like commissioners have meetings twice a month. And if there is that issue, you have a say because our meetings are open to the public. And you can come to our meetings and inform us if you're having those issues. You can at the council meetings.
We can inform
I see
you,
him
but
shaking
that
his
doesn't
head.
mean you're gonna listen.
Right. We listen.
I get your point, but I hope you get mine
I
as
do
well.
get your point, Carrie. I do. But I'm just letting you know that we have a police commission here out of our council. We have 3 members that are on it. And if there's issues in the police department and they can't go to their chief about it, they can come to their police committee. And if they can't go to our police committee, they come to us as a council. I don't know what you guys have. I know I can't speak for you guys, but that's what the city of Newcastle has. I don't know what Upton's council has, but we do have a police committee if our chief isn't doing his job.
I'm just asking you to address the number one problem, the number one issue, and that's going to be who is the ultimate say.
Pam?
Yes.
And by us all being here tonight and seeing what we're seeing tonight, we will have a better idea of who to elect and whatever for our sheriffs and stuff like that. I mean, it kind of makes them more accountable for what they are.
Mr. Bell's got something to say?
Kind of getting back to dispatch. If the county says, okay, we'll buy the equipment, the city says, okay, we'll supply the building. Now the question seems to be, who owns the equipment? If I go out here and I get myself a building, I'm going to start up a big old hairy garage. I put in all the equipment and everything else. I decide to move, or you decide to demolish the building. I still got my equipment back. It still belongs to me. It doesn't belong to the building owner. So I don't quite understand what the problem is there. Plus the fact, as far as I'm concerned, with the dispatchers. Who do the dispatchers work for? One thing that hasn't been brought up all night long is our dispatchers work for first responders. That takes in all of the law enforcement, the fire department, the ambulance, whoever belongs to the first responding organization. That's who they're working for. Yeah, everybody else kind of has, well, we hire them, we do this, we do that, we do something else. But that's still who they work for. If you got to put them in a better building, I guess you should put them in a better building so that they're a lot more comfortable. They've got to have a little bit of comfort in themselves, too, in their work area. But the first responders, I live in the city. Well, I don't. But does that make them a city employee, or do somehow you figure out how you're going to work out how they get paid, what their benefits are?
That's what the contract would be about.
Well, in that way you can turn around and get everybody else into it. But when you start drawing lines and saying, okay, it's your building, it's my equipment, or it's your building, it's your equipment, only if you buy it.
And you know, I have to say, Don, I totally agree with what you have to say. And I want everybody out here to know that our dispatchers work for everybody in the county, whether it's in Upton, whether it's in Osage, or whether it's in Newcastle. We don't draw lines in the sand. We help everybody just the same. And I don't want anybody to think that their health is at risk or that they're not going to get the fire department when they're needed. That's not what this is about. And it doesn't matter who employs us because we are doing the same job for everybody out there. And I just want everybody to know that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello. One of the comments I would have made earlier was already addressed, which is no matter where you live in Weston County, whether you live in Osage, Upton, or Newcastle, or out in the range, you're still nevertheless a Weston County resident. So that's important. And then the other comment is I worked for a number of years in a larger corporation where I worked for small businesses too, but in a larger corporation, sometimes we had issues that we had to negotiate, and sometimes it felt to me at one point, that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, because when there's really deeply felt convictions or opinions, it's hard to get people to move from that, and yet something is necessary. So I just wanted to share this thought that what I learned was that looking for a perfect agreement was not attainable. So perfection is often the enemy of good enough. And so if we could get something together that's good enough, it's a starting point that will work for everybody. So I just want to put that thought out there and encourage people to give it a try. Because I really like the statement that it's the most fiscally sensible approach to have a single dispatch. And realistically, people have got to communicate with each other all the time anyway, whether it's 1 or 2 or 10 dispatches. But the point is, things are going to happen where everybody's got to communicate and be involved. You just had a recent example of it. So I just draw your attention to that it doesn't really make things better to make it too complicated. So let's try to achieve something workable. That's it. I just want to say that. Thank you.
I would like to see the dispatcher stay in the sheriff's department. I'm not saying it has to stay in that particular room, but they do have cameras on those hallways, I would assume. So the dispatchers, I'm sure, monitor those cameras, and they can be Johnny on the spot if something breaks down back there in the detention center. I want somebody watching me. I know that, if I'm dealing with inmates back there. Now, do you have cameras that show any of that?
For the hallways, but not for the cell blocks.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there going to be a deadline? Like, how long is this going to go on? I mean,
Please make a deadline.
A lot. I mean, I think there needs, as a county person that lives in the county or lives in the city, how long is it going to take to come up with a solution that is good for the city, that's good for the county? This has been going on too long. There has to be a deadline.
Our next meeting.
And this deadline.
And we said that, Pam. We said that there needs to be a deadline. And I know Jeannie Stone said something about getting started next week. But you have Chief Bridge who still needs to talk to her council. So I don't know when or how you'll get the A-OK to move forward. But, I mean,
We have a meeting once a month. We can call a special meeting, and we also have budget meetings coming up, so I'll go over with our clerk, and my mayor, and we'll move forward from there. And I'll let you know personally, or I'll let Chief know.
I would say you guys need to have that communications and get it started, and I would hope that, like Jane Stone said, something next week.
So,
and then we need to have an update via email or another meeting or something, because we need to also keep you guys accountable to get this done. So, I mean, what do you guys suggest? I suggest that you guys definitely start meeting next week, but like I said, Chief Bridge needs to talk with her council, or at least meet next week so you have something to present.
Well,
to your
I
council.
know they've given me carte blanche to meet, so we can absolutely begin that, but I can't agree to any agreement.
Exactly.
My city council has to do that.
But we could start writing an
Absolutely.
agreement.
Yeah, and they've already given me the nod to do anything we need to do.
Okay.
They get the final say.
So, I guess we just need you guys you 5 to get that date set. Or the 3 of you at least get started and then bring in the other 2. Yes.
Mr. Bell's got his hand up.
If we can speak at a city council meeting, Pam, that's changed, because over the years I've been invited by people from the city to come speak, and when I've stood up to speak, they go, point of order, he does not reside in the city, no standing, which is true. So that's where I come from when I shake my head.
Since I've been here, 4 years now, I've never had, this council's never in 4 years that I've been on it, said no to someone to talk.
A point about contracts can't be broken. All a contract does, the contract's only as good as the word to the man that signs it. And if he signs it, you're guaranteeing attorneys will be involved. That's all a contract does. And when you have a three contract member, any one breaks it, you've got 3 contracts to renegotiate then. So I'm against doing the contract deal. As far as one dispatcher 2, you guys already got one. I've got one. Whatever you do, I'm still only going to have one. So you guys have to decide if you want to give up your right to the one you're already paying for and pay for another one. Maybe you guys in town are rich. I'm not. Okay. And as far as the Joint Power Board, there's been a lot of discussion about here tonight, but I do know the hospital would not be where it is today if it wasn't for a Joint Power Board. And I also know because of the Joint Power Board, it's probably saved close to $1 million over the life of the hospital so far by just one man on that Joint Power Board. And the Joint Power Board, he was from Upton, and he said, we're going to do this, or Upton's not going to vote for it, and you won't get a hospital because of the bond issue. I have a real problem with Brian and the 2 chiefs being that board. I've been search and rescue, I've been a fire chief, I've been a fire warden in this county, and I'm not knocking any of them. When you're in there, you put on blinders. And the fire chief sees, we need a new fire truck. The police chief goes, we need new patrol cars every 30 days or every 3 months or whatever. But they get tunnel vision. If I'm there, I'm guilty of it too. You need because they're not spending their money. They're spending our money. I would envision the Joint Power Board for it to be even. If you've got him, and her, you've got 3 different sizes of entities trying to work together. It's human nature. But when you do a Joint Power Board, and they're all from the county, even the one from Newcastle will live in Newcastle probably, but they will still be a county citizen, and they are spending our money. Okay? And so the Joint Power Board should be there to buffer these guys and buffer you. The Joint Power Board should come, if it goes to one dispatch, okay, that'll be a county dispatch. They're going to run it because it's already there. Whether you guys build one or not is up to you. But this board should be a representative of the people, not the entities that want the money. The people that are paying for the service, which is everybody in this room. And then we decide, well, it's like Brian needs new pickups. Okay, we buy him a new pickup. And then Road and Bridge needs a new pickup. Well, I beg to differ with you. Brian is a first responder, and by statute, he can and has to. You might need a pickup that can run. Road and Bridge, we got radios, we've got 5 pickups for every person out there. Well, they don't have to run. If they ain't to work at 5:30 in the morning, guess what? They'll get the other pickup up there and be at 6. So we should be bumping down our equipment like that. A Joint Power Board would see that. But when you're the sheriff and the police chief, you got one tunnel vision, my department. That's it. And that's human nature. And there will always be a conflict between them 3 entities. And every fire department will think that their deal is more important. Our dispatch should have another radio, or we should have more radio. Joint Power Board looks at the whole system. And we all have to pay for this. If you guys want to pay more for your share, I would do that. But you guys can do that. But that's the thing that I see.
Just real quick, another aspect of the Joint Powers Board is a badge will cover for another badge. There is no question about it. I've seen it here locally numerous times. My God, we had an officer that left a shotgun up at the camp. He put a bullet hole through the wall of the dispatch, into dispatch, wrecked 3 cruisers, and I don't know what else he's done. Nothing was ever done.
Please don't say that. Please don't say a badge will cover another badge. I've arrested other officers before. I've turned other officers in.
You might be different, but who knows?
Absolutely, I am different.
I don't know that.
But don't say that, because do cops cover for people? Absolutely. Do criminals cover for other criminals? Absolutely. Do bankers cover for other bankers? Do attorneys cover for other attorneys? Absolutely. But don't come here and say that.
I've seen it.
I understand that, but don't bring that up here, accusing one of us of that we're dirty cops.
You may be okay, I don't know, but what about your replacement on down the road? We don't know. We know what your predecessors have done in the past.
Right, and we're not going down
I'm
that
just saying
road.
that's another aspect of we don't have to worry about.
Mr. Bell?
Well, the guys jumped on that.
You brought up the issue, do you think that you would flip the switch on dispatch?
Not
You-
chance.
You would, not you, but you will not be in that chair in 10 years as a deal. At any point, if your police chief is on the joint system and he don't like it, he can walk in if it's in your building and flip it off. And the only choice I have then,
Legally, he can't do that.
Yeah.
legally he can, but you're not gonna solve that until you go to court and prove it. You can flip that switch. But if it's everybody's equipment, my equipment, his equipment and everything, then you can't. The county can't flip you off. They can't flip the switch. He's your sheriff. He is your sheriff, and he's your sheriff. You guys get 2 votes in here either way. You get to vote on the city council, but if Brian is not dispatching, then he's your sheriff. Do something about it. But as far as the city ordinances, the sheriff does not do that because he can't by law. A sheriff cannot enforce city ordinances. He can only enforce state statutes. That's the drawback. But don't say they won't do it because they can't do it. You can have the best sheriff in the world, but he cannot enforce city ordinances. And I'm not belittling anybody, but the police department is merely mall cops. They have authority on city property inside the city limits, and that's it.
Okay, go ahead.
So, question about the Joint Powers Board. How many boards within the city of Newcastle have openings? What? Out of any boards in the city of Newcastle, how many of them currently have openings?
One.
In the county, how many boards do we have that have openings?
I don't know.
We have several openings. Okay.
3.
So, I personally am totally against the Joint Powers Board because we already have boards that don't have enough members, that can't get people to volunteer. So, the hospital board, do they volunteer or are they paid?
We volunteer.
Okay, so even so, where are you going to find these people? Where are you going to find people to be on this board? Okay, so how many people do you suggest being on the board?
That's up to these guys, but if it concerns first responders, you'll get people to be there. Their wives will be there if they can't be there. And there will be people who can't afford their taxes at the rate they're going up. They'll find the time. If it's an important board, which this will be important to every person, I think you can fill it.
My other question is the 2 chiefs and the sheriff get along? Great. So let's say the 2 chiefs are on one page and the sheriff's on another page. How do we decide that?
Well, we've been in that situation in the past from the other side.
And
So we had concerns in the past, and we had no say. The sheriff and I had no say.
And
And so what we're asking is for equal representation for all the citizens in the county, in each entity and in the county.
So if you move forward with just the 3 of you, which I'm perfectly okay with, but I'm just asking, if the 3 of you don't get along, are not on the same page, 2 of you are and 1 of you aren't, how do you make the decision?
Well, if somebody doesn't get what they want.
That's exactly what and I'm gonna speak for the fire department in Upton. We needed IM responding, and we needed it for the dispatchers. Because we couldn't hear what was going on. And that system, when it finally got into place, was put there for them. But then we weren't calling them. We weren't doing unnecessary traffic stops and things like that. But we were voted down. Well, we weren't even voted. We were told no. With no, absolutely no means to have it reconsidered.
Susan, I'm not against
So,
you, so
I
don't
understand
know.
that, but you have to understand that somebody doesn't always get what they want. But if the county and every person that's chosen or elected or hired takes each person individually and knows how important that position is, just like our dispatchers do. It doesn't matter if you don't always get what you want. Everybody's needs will be met.
I don't disagree at all. I'm just asking if you guys get to a situation in coming up with this contract and you don't agree, how are you going to continue to move forward?
We have a contract. We have to work together.
But you haven't got to the contract yet. You're in the process of building
You
the
just said
contract.
when you've got a contract and somebody doesn't get along. Sorry, I misheard you.
You're
You're talking
working
about
towards
going
the contract.
To the contract.
Yeah, well, you're starting next week to
Sorry.
build the
I
contract.
misheard you.
And the three of you don't get along. Who steps in and says, this is the best route and that's where we're going? Sorry, Sheriff, you didn't like that one. Sorry, Chief, the next time you didn't like this one. Who's going to be that person to move you forward? I think it's great that you involve the attorney, with the exception of the fact that one attorney represents both the town of Upton and the city of Newcastle. I would suggest if you're going to move forward, you find a person, an individual that has no real feelings towards any of them. And I get that's going to mean that you go outside of Weston County to find that person.
Why doesn't that apply to the three, the two chiefs and the sheriff?
What do you mean?
Well, just what you said. You would suggest they go outside of where we're at to get that, to come in and mediate. How would that? I'm having a little trouble getting into my head on this.
You had it. You had it.
I had it?
Yeah, you had it.
Finish me off, man. You know what I'm saying. How does that not apply to the two chiefs and the sheriff? If they're in control and they're going to fight each other. My other thing is, I've been sitting here listening. I'm thinking this has been going on for quite some time. There are people in this room that just jumped out of the frying pan into the fire because they were just recently elected. Okay? Maybe they don't know. But there are people in this room who are responsible for this. There are people who have used our taxpayer money with no plan. There's nothing there to spend the money. I can't do that at home. So, what I'm saying, is you guys need to get your stuff in one bag, figure this out, forget about blaming the past, which you say you want to do, but you want to pick up certain items out of the past that we're going to stick on. Each and every one of you said.
I have not said that.
You said you had enough. You've only been at it for 6 months.
You're exactly right. I have had enough. If there's lines being drawn like, hey, this is all we're doing, then I am done with negotiating.
You know, when you take 20 people and put them in a room, have one person talk to them, then ask each and every one of them what that person said. They're all going to hit a different point, a different thought. None of us are going to see it the same. So the line in the sand may be your perception.
No, I wrote it down.
Okay,
word for word.
I'm just saying.
Exactly.
I'm not accusing you.
I have it on audio.
All
I've
I'm
listened to
saying
it.
Because your perception is different than mine or his or anybody else's in this room. Watch that finger.
Alright, so,
Oh,
others have a question. Ed,
Bill Clinton.
Ed, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did.
Or
You know,
statement?
the overriding thing on all of this is that this is going to go away. It's going to go to Casper. So let's get our act together, get it done, because it is going to go away. And all this money that has been spent has just gone down the drain.
Cool.
Okay? If I remember right, it was going to be 5 years. I don't know if that number has changed anymore.
Well, in 1994, when I started with the police department, we were talking about regional dispatching, and it's yet to happen in Wyoming.
Well, this is being pushed, I think, by the state. So I think Casper is coming. Okay, as far as I know. When I was running as a candidate, I was told that. Okay, and I think it's still true today. So let's get our act together. It is the people. Okay, I was running for the people. It is our system. It's not anybody else's. We're paying for it.
I got a question. How does this work? And I'm breaking my own rule. You never ask a question you don't know the answer to. But she brought up a good point. She said, well, since I've been to work at the police department, it's been going to change. Well, something has changed. There is not an ambulance service out of here anymore. Campbell County, if I'm not mistaken, is the official ambulance service for Weston County. So now, if we're talking about a dispatch, and we're going to go to 2, who does Campbell County come to? Say, Weston County calls, and you guys call on different accidents the same day. That's just something that I had not thought of until this point. But because it never has happened, don't mean it won't happen.
You only get one ambulance, so.
My point exactly, but we'll have 2 dispatches.
No, there's only one ambulance in town, so.
Weston County Ambulance Service.
That's what
It's
you
$1
need to
million
start.
coming into our county. That's not going to Campbell County. Public relations.
Yes,
To
sir.
answer Ed, seemed like there, if I'm new, what I think, and correct me, is that the equipment we just bought, part of the reason we bought the equipment we did is because it will, if that happens, it will be usable still by the county if that happens.
I did know that. But this whole nonsense, bickering back and forth, it's going to go away. Push comes to shove, it will go away. When Casper gets turned on, it will go away. Whether we use our system or not, or it's tied in, fine. But it doesn't become, it's no longer our problem. It will be theirs, and they will dictate what we will do.
They'll dictate, but if it's like a lot of things, they'll be in charge, but we'll still have work to do on this end, and we'll still need that same equipment.
I understand that. I was not arguing the fact that the equipment was not here or that it could not be used in the future. But it will be controlled by them, not us. And so what I'm saying is all this bickering here is nonsense. Get it done, people. Get it done.
Well, I think we're trying. I think we're trying to do that, Ed. I think we're trying. They're ready to put the past behind them. We certainly are ready to put the
I
past
keep hearing
behind
that.
us.
Let's see what happens.
But
prove us in the
I
pudding.
think we're to the point where I think we can work together on this.
Let's hope so.
That's a plus. Yeah. We're making progress.
Beers on me. Yeah.
Okay, where?
So, do we want to pick you guys next week or? Okay. Sheriff Hobart and Chief Rich, do you guys have days next week that you absolutely cannot meet?
I did not bring my calendar with me, and I have something on every single day. If it's on a Wednesday, I can absolutely be there. I know that for a fact off the top of my head.
Sheriff, Wednesday?
Yeah, it's just Tuesday.
Afternoon.
Yeah.
Afternoon, good for me.
Just tell me what time I will be there, it does not matter.
And do you guys want the attorneys involved in that first meeting or no? I don't think it's necessary for first meeting.
Do we have to pay?
They want to volunteer.
I personally think it would be a good idea.
What about a moderator?
Who's running?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where they would all.
An official moderator instead of an attorney.
That's more money we gotta pay. They don't want to do that.
Just an option.
I'll do it for nothing. Just saying. I think if we need a moderator, then we probably need a moderator throughout the whole process of running the dispatcher. At some point, if we can't get along, then, and I've heard a lot of the sides on this, and Mayor, you have been through the grind with this, with meetings, but I am open to whatever needs to happen to achieve one dispatch, with the exception of, I'm not willing to compromise on it needs to be equal. Everybody needs to have a say. That was a big sticking point. And I would caution us, I hear we're trying to get somewhere, but I look at what we originally were talking about and where we're at now, and I don't see a lot of compromise. I see the equipment going to your facility, which I'm fine with if that's what we do, but a saying just keeps coming to my head that if you keep on doing what you've always done, you're going to keep on getting what you've always got. And we're not making many changes to that process. Hopefully we can get along and we can put this thing in the past. We do need to have deadlines. Never, ever 1 and 2 dispatches. And transparency has been used in this meeting quite a bit, but this whole process, I think we've made an effort to be transparent, but we've been far from transparent with the communication lines between the city and the commissioners. It's easy to throw that out there as a word that everyone, oh yeah, be transparent. But the communication has not been good, and I'm not blaming you. We're at fault with the contract and those type of things. We've got a lot of speed bumps just from the concerns that the people have brought to us that are going to be down the road after we determine if this is going to go in your facility. These speed bumps aren't going to be easy. A contract is great, but all those things will have to be addressed times 3, maybe even 4, contract-wise. And I just hope that we're prepared for that and willing to communicate and be transparent, because if we're not, this will not work. We're going to be in a bad place again. And it won't take long to get there.
So if you guys meet next week on the 19th, which is after city council and the commissioners meet, and you guys have, Chief, they have their meetings, what, the first Tuesdays or the second Tuesdays of every month?
Do you guys have one of these?
No.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, and we're in update for that. So.
Chief, when do you guys have your meeting, once a month?
It will be the second Tuesday of every month.
The 9th. Okay. Yeah. So how can we get updated by the 3 of you, not just 1 of you, so that there's no miscommunication on what you guys, or where you're at in your discussion?
I mean, we can have the attorneys get back to you guys, so it takes 3 of us out.
That's fine by me if that's what you guys want.
I mean, does that work with you
Is that
guys?
gonna slow down the process?
That's what I'm trying to avoid, because our meetings obviously are never on the same day.
Right.
So, but to have someone, or all 3 of them, or somehow update so there's no miscommunications, because there seems to be, like somebody said, you're in a room with 20 people, everybody's gonna come out with their own version of that, of what happened.
I think the attorneys could write a joint letter after we get with the chiefs and the sheriff and just outline what was discussed and what the agreements were if there were any, and get it back to you guys. So I think it could be just a joint letter from the attorneys.
Because I think we need to stay on top of it, and if it takes more than one meeting a week for us to get to the conclusion and work things out so we can move forward from this and focus on our energy on other issues in our areas, then I think we need to do that. And so, would you commit to that, Chief Rich? And then Sheriff Colbert, would you commit to that, working as diligently as you guys all can to get us to the end result?
When is your meeting after the 9th?
The 15th.
Thank you.
So you'll have a set done.
So they're meeting the 19th. And then the afternoon is what I heard, but I don't know the time. Did you have a question, sir?
I want to clarify what I am hearing.
Okay.
I'm hearing coming from a lot of the city that there's concern about people, about our dispatchers. So far, am I wrong in that? Am I wrong in saying that's what I'm hearing?
There is a concern, but there's more than just that.
So far, what I've heard from the county is concern about the equipment. And the statement that was just made as far as if the equipment isn't located here, it isn't going to happen. I've heard the chief go, if that's the line in the sand, then, I've been dealing with this for 6 months. I'm done with it. Well, my question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important are our people?
10.
Does anybody tell me?
10.
On a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that piece of equipment?
Equipment is part of their job.
Okay, that equipment is a tool. The ultimate point here is the public safety, people. We don't run in a fire truck to save the house as much as what we do to save those people that are in that house. We don't send that ambulance out to save that horse that got in the accident. We save the people. Who makes that happen? Our people make that happen, not the equipment. The equipment's just a tool. Yes, if you got piss poor equipment, it takes you longer to get it done. It makes it harder. But if we don't take care of our people, they are who makes it happen. So, pros and cons. What is the positive aspects of having the dispatch moved so that they're away from the inmates, so that they're away from all the other distractions, so that they have a better work environment? What would be wrong with opening up some more space in the sheriff's office by doing that? Is it just because we got to have control of that equipment? Well, that's our equipment. At the end of it, it's not yours. It's ours. We paid for it. And I'll say, I reside in the city. So I pay county taxes and I pay city taxes. So I'm paying for both. And I also have property in Pennington County, and I have no say with Pennington County other than when they have county commissioner elections and going and making sure the some bitches get kicked out of there, which I've done. You need a facilitator. Somebody who can say, I'm hearing what you're saying. And how important is that? How important is that? Do you prioritize that equipment over the people? Or which is more important in saving that person when you have to send police out? You got county sheriffs going to assist if it's inside the city limits, or maybe over at Upton, especially with their limited resources there. getting an ambulance there. Maybe it's something that the fire department also goes on to. That takes people to make it all happen. So let's keep in mind, one, the people that you're here to serve and how you can best serve them. Now I'm hearing all over that everybody seems to agree one dispatch is best for the community. And it is. Because if you got two dispatches, if I call 911, who am I getting? Am I getting the city? And in turn, they're going, oh, well, this is in the county. You have to call this number. Now, when I was a police officer, we didn't have 911. And so the people had to call the city dispatch office or the county. And I tell you, 911 sure resolved a lot of that. But, so one dispatch, yes. But really, what is the best location? Like Stanley said, put it at the fire department. Well, put it wherever is a neutral location that y'all can agree on. But take care of the people that you're here to serve. Take care of the people who are doing the job. And we, the voters, in turn, will take care of you. Otherwise, if you're not taking care of the job, the next election, by God, we're going to fire your ass and find somebody else that will. I'm sorry.
No. You're hitting the nail right on the head. And if I am not doing my due diligence, I would hope that I will be reelected. So, and I'm sure all of us up here feel the same as well as the commissioner. So, but speaking of dispatchers, I'm going to kind of change the subject here really quick. It is National Telecommunication Week that represents our communication and our dispatchers. So thank you, ladies, that are here.
Thank you.
And I can tell you, as a former dispatcher that was trained here, never once was I trained to serve one entity or another. So I do want you guys to know that it was, call comes in, you get what entities and services that are needed. The next call that comes in, same thing. There was never anything trained otherwise than to take care of everyone and prioritize. Public safety is number one.
And I just think that when the chief started talking tonight, that was his first thing that he said. He was wanting the betterment for everybody. So.
And that's the same thing with the commissioners. There's never been anything that has stated that public safety wasn't number one. I just want you guys to know that. It's everything else that we're discussing about is where we want to get, the foundation laid and stable so we can move on from this. But I do have faith in Chief Bowles. Otherwise, this council would not have taken 8 months of filling the shoes until we found the right candidate. I have faith in Chief Bridge. I have faith in Sheriff Hobart that they will do justice for our community. So I can't wait to get the first update from the meeting on the 19th. Is there anything else that regarding dispatch that needs to be discussed? Any other questions or comments?
Just some food for thought for you guys. When the sheriff's saying that they can do dispatch for $380,000, so I want you to kind of take these figures into thought processing. When you see our numbers at almost $600,000, at $380,000, that a dispatcher at $21 an hour, at 2,080 hours per year, that's $43,680. That's only 8.6 people. It doesn't count for any benefits or anything like that. So you need to take a hard look at numbers when you're looking at that. Run run a dispatch for a certain budget. When you see our numbers compared to this, it's just low. You need to weigh that.
Yes.
I just have a question as far as if the fire has any thoughts or anything they'd like to say. Yeah, I know I'm putting you on the spot right now, and the same with search and rescue.
Yeah, really I don't.
Okay.
I think we're kind of all the same. We would like one dispatch. It's really not going to affect us one way or the other. I mean, there might be some logistics going in that we have to figure out. But yeah, as far as, I mean, I think one dispatch is definitely going to be beneficial. I think everybody's pretty much beat the horse to death again. And so, yeah, other than that, I really don't say.
Scott?
Single dispatch would definitely be how we would look at it. And I think the biggest concern I would have, if there is discord amongst the, I want to say the board or the chiefs and the sheriff, it will affect the community. Because it will end up affecting the dispatchers. So let's do get it fixed. And soon. Amen.
But I can tell you, talking to the dispatchers, I try to go in there, every day, a couple times a day, and talk to them. And they're stressed because of this nonsense, and it's not fair to them. And that is why I think you guys might have misconstrued what I was saying about being done, because I want this thing to be over. I want us to figure whatever we're going to do. Let's figure it out. Let's start moving on. Because it's just hurting everybody in the community, and I don't want to see that anymore.
If there is nothing else, then I will close this meeting.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Okay, so can I get a motion from the council to